Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to roll here on day 2 in Unit 1 of our Basic Math Review in Business Math, over here on page 5. If you weren't here again yesterday when we numbered our pages, we just went from the start and just did 1, 2, 3, 4, front and back all the way through for this shortened first packet that we're looking at here. So yesterday we talked about percent versus decimal versus fraction and working our way back and forth. Now today we're going to chat again about percentages, but talk more about, hey, how can I tell if something is increasing or decreasing, and how do I express that mathematically? So here we go. Again, we're in notes right now. So percent of change, how much does something change as a percentage over time, is going to be an increase or decrease given as a percentage of the original amount. Now, if that doesn't make all the sense in the world right now, do not worry about that yet. We're going to explain that here so you can see how that works. So before we get into the mathematics, there's one more thing I want to make sure we get straight. Then we can actually start saying, okay, how do I do this? So when an amount grows, when it gets bigger, okay, it's a percent of increase, which makes sense. You know, my bank account grew by this percentage. Oh, that's an increase. It got bigger. When an amount shrinks or gets smaller, it's a percentage of decrease because I have less now. And so when I can get that part down, that's going to help guide me on how to describe that to someone who's looking at my numbers. So if I'm given two numbers, okay, you know, I sold 50 items today and I sold 70 items yesterday, something like that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract the two numbers. So we're actually going to do this in this first example down here while we're doing this. So my first job, subtract the two numbers. Bigger minus smaller. We'll make note of that here so we don't. So step 1, 21 minus 12, which is 9. Okay. Second step, take the difference. Basically, that's your answer from step 1. The difference is when you subtracted them. And divide by the original number, which basically means the first number that was mentioned in the problem. Okay. That 12 would be my original. So step 2 is going to be to take the difference, this 9, and divide it by the original number, 12, and get that decimal, whatever it is. And then there's one last step to this. Then we're going to change the decimal to a percent. We're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, or we're going to multiply by 100. And if it goes from large to small, it's an increase. And if it goes from small to large, I'm just thinking as I'm writing here. You're like, Hardy, there's a long pause here. Because we flipped those. Yep. We absolutely flipped those. See, this is going to happen with me now and then. You can either put arrows. Do I really want to do it that way? I don't. See, even the teacher who's been doing this stuff for so long. Okay. So here, for instance, and I apologize, as soon as I was even saying it out of my mouth, I'm like, I think I just said it backwards, and I did. So here, when we get to step 3, I look and I go, okay, my original problem, it got bigger, smaller to larger, okay? So if it gets bigger as we go, that's going to be an increase, okay? Let's do another one that's smoother from start to beginning here. I think that kind of messed us up in the middle when I flipped those two around on you. So let's check this out again. Okay. First, subtract the two numbers, bigger minus smaller. Then take our difference, take our answer from part 1, and divide it by the original number. Now that's going to be the next question people are going to have. They're going to be like, okay, how many decimal points do we go to? Round to the nearest 100th, which is 2 decimal places, okay, if necessary. So here, if I punch this in my calculator, you're like, Hardy, I thought it just said to 2. Why did you go to 4? Ooh, because if you stop and think about it for a minute, when I turn this back into a decimal, 1, 2, whoops, my first one didn't show up, 1, 2, 38.57, 2 decimal places, okay? And since the original number was bigger and it got smaller, okay, large to small, that would be a decrease, okay? That's how this comes from. Do I get smaller as I go to the right? Decrease. Do I get bigger as I go to the right? Increase. You know what I'm coming with next. If you're watching this later, pause me. Try the last one here on your own, then unfreeze to see if you've got the correct answer. All right, did you get to the right spot? Bigger minus smaller. Divide that by your original. 42 divided by 60.7. Some calculators may say 0.70, I'm not sure. But since we went from bigger to smaller, larger to smaller, that's a decrease, and that's how this works here. Now, there's one more twist we can get in this, okay? You may not always be given 2 numbers. You may be given 1 number and a percent that it increased or decreased by. And we can still figure out what value we end up with by doing a couple of steps. So let's try this out again. All right, number 1, and we're gonna do, let's see, can I squeeze this in? Oh, this might get a little tricky, we'll get there. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna change the percent to a decimal, okay? So down here on this first one, okay, job 1, we're gonna take that 25 and turn it into a decimal. I probably should have just done that here. Well, that happens sometimes. So that's my first job, change that to a decimal. Next, we are going to multiply the decimal by the given number. I started to do that down here. This is actually step 1. This would actually be step 2. So if I multiply those, I get 18. Okay? So 72 times 25% is 18. And then my last step, we're going to take the product, we're going to take our answer from number 2 and add or subtract it from the original number. Okay? If it's increased by, pausing for a moment here. My apologies, I've gotten distracted there for just a moment. So here, if it's increased by, we're going to add that to the original. And if it's decreased by, we're going to subtract it from the original. Okay? So here it says it increased by 25%. So my last step is going to be 72 plus 18 is 90. So it's increased, we add it. And I'm going to do this just because for some reason I put increased for all of these. We don't want to do this. So we're going to change this increased to decreased just so we can actually see the two different options here. So first job, turn 50% into a decimal, move it 2 places to the left. 0.50 is good, 0.5 would be okay as well. Number 2, multiply the decimal times our number, so 16 times 0.5 or 0.50, which would be 8. And since it's decreased, we're going to take this product and we're going to subtract it from the original. 16 minus 8 is 8. It got smaller. So one last thing I need you to do, you know again what's coming. Hit pause on that video if you're watching that way and try out the last one on your own and see if we get the same thing. So increased, it should have gotten bigger. Bigger by 20%. 20% of 105 is 21. We add those up and we're set. So your job today, to make sure things are going well, is over on page 7. I would like you, and it doesn't fit as well because it works the other way, to work on dealing with our percentage code breakers. So you do the problem, you get your answer. You can find the answer up here somewhere in the letters and do the letters down here, or to be honest, if you just want to do these and then just mark them off as you go because you're not a code person, that's fine. But we're doing that over on page 7. That will do us for today. And if you are watching this in sequence, tomorrow we will be doing a bit of an in-class activity with some of this stuff called Trashketball. Little bit of physical activity, a little bit of group work, a little bit of review, and then we'll just be doing a very simple mini quiz on Friday to be able to wrap this up and get into the actual business stuff. So thanks again for your time, and we'll see you next time.